Thanks for checking out this movie review video. So this is for the Italian Giallo film from 1972, Death Walks at Midnight. If it sounds kind of familiar to a title of another one I did, Death Walks on High Heels, it's because it's by the same director, Luciano Ercoli. Now, Luciano Ercoli has not only done Death Walks on High Heels, but also did The Forbidden Photos of a Lady Above Suspicion, which those two films I already have reviews for on my channel. And if you are into just Giallo in general, I have an entire playlist on my channel for Giallo film reviews. I even have some playlists broken down by certain directors who have a lot of Giallo films. So, like Lenzi and Bava, Fulci. Although Fulci, I only have two for Fulci, but anyway. Script for this one was written by Ernesto Gastaldi, who wrote scripts also for The Vampire and the Ballerina, Werewolf in a Girl's Dormitory, The Whip and the Body, Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key, All the Colors of the Dark, The Case of the Bloody Iris, The Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward, Torso, The Suspicious Death of a Minor, The Scorpion with Two Tails, The Case of the Scorpion's Tail, Death Walks on High Heels. So obviously a lot of Giallo script writing for Ernesto Gastaldi. That name just keeps coming up and coming up and coming up, and usually pretty solid with not only the overall script writing but the twists that end up coming into at the end of the film. And this film is similar as well. Good twists to this one. Also, this one was written also partially by Mahnahen Velasco, who's come up before. Also wrote scripts for The Forbidden Photos of a Lady Above Suspicion and Death Walks on High Heels. So obviously these two writers have collaborated with Lucio Ercoli before. So there you go. There's a good relationship there. Now that's kind of a theme because there are the two main actors, well, two main-ish actors in this, Nieves Navarro and Simone Andrew, both were also in The Forbidden Photos of a Lady Above Suspicion and Death Walks on High Heels. So they had worked with Luciano Ercoli before. So good relationship. So we see a theme of the writers and the actors working with this director again, which would assume that either they think he does a great job, they have a good personal relationship with him, or both of those things. So Simone Andrew, who plays Geobaldi, does look familiar and did immediately look familiar to me. So I was like, what else has he been in? So obviously Forbidden Photos of a Lady Above Suspicion, Death Walks on High Heels, but he was also in The Blood-Spattered Bride and The Killer is One of 13. So more Giallo films for him. And Nieves Navarro has been in even more Giallo than Andrew has. She plays Valentina, and she was in Forbidden Photos of a Lady Above Suspicion, Death Walks on High Heels, All the Colors of the Dark, and So Sweet, So Dead, just so you know. Also, this film was also known under the title of Cry Out in Terror. I do think Death Walks at Midnight is better than Cry Out in Terror, but Cry Out in Terror is also not terrible. So there is that. Nieves Navarro was actually Ercoli's wife at this point. He cast her in many of his films as tough, independent women, and you see that in this film. She is a tough, independent woman, and that's the type of character he always wanted for her. I don't know if it's because that's what he believed should be a woman's role in these types of films, or if it was just specifically for his wife, because he liked her in those roles. But you definitely see that kind of tough, independent woman aspect to her character, which is cool to see, because within a lot of Giallo films, women are typically pretty toothless for the most part, and they don't do things like at the end of this film, like shoot Stefano in the back to be one of the heroes, because in the end, you know, yes, Gio saved her, but then in the end, she saves Gio back, when usually it's just a situation where Gio would end up saving her, and then because she's the damsel in distress, and then that's kind of the end of it. So it is nice to see those more independent, powerful women in these roles, because for Giallo, it's typically not that way. They're very much damsels in distress, very flimsy characters. The Rolls Royce that was used in this film, you don't see it a whole lot, but it was also in Death Walks on High Heels. So I thought that was just kind of an interesting little trivia fact. Really odd start to this film with Valentina volunteering to be injected with an experimental hallucinogen. And even more odd that Gio is taking pictures of her while she's high. So, yeah, it's just a weird setup. It's a weird thing to happen in any film, honestly. It's weird. Like, why would she be wanting to do this? I mean, I assume she's getting paid, but then she ends up finding out that it was all kind of a ruse because Gio just wanted to, have this story about hallucinogens, basically. But it's just a really weird setup to the film. And also, why would she be okay with being photographed at all when she's getting high? And she should have really kind of questioned that because I know she says in it, like, I just don't want my face shown. But she obviously knows her face is being photographed because it's very obvious. But also, like, why do you even need to take photos of just someone explaining their hallucinogenic experience? You know what I mean? Like, I come to expect this from Giallo films, though. Like, the scripts, a lot of times, like, things are a little bit crazy, a little bit wacky. You always have that. That's kind of an aspect of Giallo that we all expect. There's that quirky weirdness. So I do like that, but it's also, these questions pop into your head while you're watching. Cool effect when Valentina is looking out the window, how it ends up oscillating between her and the building across from her being in focus. Good directorial cinematography type thing. You can tell they like superimposed it over it. It wasn't like the actual reflection, although reflections are used at other points within this film and they do look good. That's something, in general that Giallo did a lot of, using mirrors to show reflections. And usually it would be like they start on the mirror and then move over to the actual person as opposed to the reflection or vice versa. So that does happen here. But yeah, like that one in particular looked cool. That was when she was high. She's looking out the window and it's like her being high, then the building outside. Her being high, the building outside. Just a cool effect. I really enjoyed that. I like how Gio thinks it's funny and okay that he tricked Valentina into being drugged and photographed. Yeah, he doesn't come off as a very good person immediately. Actually, I mean, not many people in this film come off as good people, which is probably intentional because you want everyone in a Giallo film to basically be a potential red herring. And they do introduce so many characters in this film, which I think really helps with the uncertainty of where it's going to go in the end and who ultimately is going to end up being at the root of all this madness. So it's helpful. It's good. I love that they throw a lot of characters out there. It keeps you guessing. And like I said, they're not good people, and that's intentional to help with the red herring. But also, a lot of them act in suspicious manners. So I'll end up commenting about more of those specifically as I go on here. It's funny seeing Stefano just rocking out to music and working out while Valentina is in danger trying to get his attention. Now, I believe that that was intentional, that he was trying to crank the music because he knew that she went across the street and he was getting her set up to be killed by Henri, who was the one who had killed Dolores, which is the death that Valentina saw when she was high, which apparently had happened like 6 months before she ended up seeing it. And that's another thing to point out, actually, that type of thing does show up in Giallo films here and there, like people kind of unlocking these subconscious memories of deaths, or getting some sort of like almost medium-esque reading of like something that happened in the past. So yeah, but I do think that was intentional, that he was trying to make sure that he could kind of not, or have an alibi for why he wouldn't hear her or see her getting killed. But then when she uses the broken mirror and she's shining the light in his face, he kind of, I guess, felt like he had to go over. But obviously when he gets over there, he really plays it off as like, oh, this is nothing. One of your friends is messing with you, even though he sees that there's a giant hole in the door that was punched through with that metal nail fist gauntlet, basically, which is a cool killing weapon for a Giallo film, by the way. I do have to say that. He just comes off as just like a crappy boyfriend at that point. Doesn't really come off as all that suspicious. Although I did kind of end up suspecting him, not in the beginning, but probably around halfway through, just because of how whatever he was about everything. I was just like, either there's something going on with him that's more than meets the eye, or he's just like the worst boyfriend ever. But obviously he ends up being kind of at the root of everything, but talk about that again later. So Oh, so anyway, to go back, when Stefano is questioning what Valentina was saying, that's supposed to play to the audience as, yes, he may be right that what she thinks is going on isn't really going on because of those drugs she was on. So actually starting it, even though I said it was an odd way to start the film, starting it with her introduction to this new experimental hallucinogen, it does do a good job of kind of setting the audience up to question the narrative of Valentina, because the film is from her perspective. So you do kind of settle into that position of not feeling like you can fully take her perspective as truth necessarily. Like there could be something else going on there. And that gets played with a lot in Giallo films too. Verushka couldn't be more suspicious at the mental institution when she ends up hiding for a little bit behind the door, and then she runs and she gets in her car and leaves Valentina there, which then makes me question why later on, when she runs into Verushka again at the cemetery, she is okay to go with Verushka somewhere again, because obviously, like, she just ditched you. Have you not learned your lesson? But that's Giallo for you. They do dumb stuff like that. I laughed at the dude cracking a beer while he was driving Valentina to Milan. That was after she left the mental institution. But I didn't laugh when he then tried to assault her right after that. That guy, another one of those terrible characters, suspicious characters for red herring purposes, because obviously he kept popping up. He was found with a dead cat at one point as well to kind of further suspicion of him. Yeah, and he just kept popping up, popping up, popping up. He was obviously a big red herring that they threw in there. You're seeing things from Valentina's perspective, but you can understand why the inspector, I think his name was Inspector Sereno, why he doesn't believe her, especially with what he says in order to refute all of her claims. Like, she does kind of come off as potentially a crazy person, because she's coming to him saying, I know about this murder that happened 6 months ago. I just saw it when I had this hallucination on these new experimental hallucinogenic drugs. Like, that sounds like the rantings of a person who doesn't know what they're doing, either a drug addict, a crazy person, or both of those things. So you see why the inspector does not believe her. It makes sense. So Valentino and Stefano couldn't hold off having sex for one night while kids are staying with them. This is another one of those weird, quirky Giallo things. The fact that these little kids who are staying with them, who I don't really understand why they're in this, it's just very random, they make a comment about hearing them seeing them have sex the next morning at breakfast. And it's just kind of like, really? You have someone's kids with you for, what, one night and a day, and you can't hold off having sex? I mean, come on. It's ridiculous. As soon as Valentina volunteers to go to the cemetery for Stefano, you know something's going to happen. Obviously, that is when something happens. There's another attempt on her life at that point. It is hard to believe Valentina goes with Verushka again. That's right, I already talked about that. My apologies. So, Helena's manager says he killed Dolores to avenge Helena's death. Then Verushka ends up dead, which means there's more to this. Not just because there was more time in the film. Actually, at that point, I think there was still like an entire half an hour of the film left. But the fact that the entire time also you see Henri's face, the manager, Helena's old manager, who, it's not just that you end up seeing his face, but it's also that he admits to having killed Dolores so early on. And then he also gives a motive so early on. You just know, like, there's something else to this. Now, I was wondering if maybe he was just saying that and he didn't actually kill her, but no. He actually ends up being rolled into all this craziness, which it is a very intricate thing, and I'll talk about it in a few minutes here, but it's a very intricate ending and a very intricate explanation as to all the stuff that went on with this film. And I do like that. It points to actually good writing and a good ability to kind of keep the audience guessing, keep you confused until that very end to get that wonderful surprise payoff. Juan and Hans, I like that their names rhyme, seem like red herrings since they show up so late and are tied to a drug syndicate, which you heard a little bit about it here and there, but like not seriously until Juan and Hans pop up. By the way, you also have to love Hans's laugh. That's all he does. He doesn't even speak. He just laughs in a weird manner. I just love that. But when they show up, you really do feel like they're red herrings, but they're really not. They're also a part of all this stuff, which you end up seeing in the end when they're there to do the bidding of Stefano. You know, they're basically Stefano's underlings as Stefano tries to climb the drug syndicate ladder. I thought when the idea of the drug syndicate was thrown in there that it was kind of going to be like that typical thing that gets thrown out in all Giallo films of it's a sex maniac, it's a sex maniac. Because it's never a sex maniac, really. You know, they just throw that out there to kind of distract the audience a bit. So I thought that the drug syndicate thing, when it was randomly dropped, was that same type of thing, just there to be a distraction. But no, it ended up tying in. So I like that that was the case. The end explanation is pretty intricate. Stefano was very smart in the way he was trying to move up the drug syndicate ladder, while also getting revenge on Helena and Nicola. Now, let me get this straight. So basically what happened, and I think I got this right, because it was a lot coming at you at once as the explanation at the end. So Stefano was involved in the drug syndicate, pushing drugs. He was with Helena, who was a model at the time. Helena, he ends up seeing cheating with, well, first of all, she got caught for prostitution. Then he starts hooking up with Dolores for her, I think, status slash money. Her apartment. Then he sees from across the way Helena hooking up with Nicola, and he's trying to keep an eye on, that's where their drug operation was running out of, and he was keeping the drugs in there, which was just a, empty office building, I guess they were renting. So he sees Helena hooking up with Nicola, and then he also sees Nicola stealing drugs. So then he has Helena killed by Henri, because he phones Henri and tells Henri, I'm sorry, that Dolores gets killed. Dolores was, I know it's hard to keep straight. Dolores was hooking up with Nicola. Helena had been caught with prostitution. No, I think Helena was hooking up with Nicola. But in the end, he got Henri. He killed Helena. Stefano killed Helena to get back at her for hooking up with Nicola. But then he also got Henri to kill Dolores by telling him that Helena had killed, Dolores had killed Helena. It's just a lot of names. Remember when I said that there were a lot of characters thrown into this and it's intricate? It's intricate, yeah. So then that's what happened. And then he was able to move up the drug ladder, basically, because then that took care of Henri, who was involved in the drug trade as well. And then he had his buddies Juan and Hans backing him up as he moves up this ladder. Love when Gio trips Juan and he goes headfirst into the stack of bricks. Obviously, that was at the end after Gio busts in, breaks up the attempted murder of Valentina, and then there's that long chase scene that goes onto the roof of the buildings. When he just kind of like goes around the corner and like hides behind the ladder, and then Juan comes running out, and it's just like this really kind of just like lame trip, honestly, that the guy definitely probably would have seen coming, but it just makes it funnier because he just does this little trip. And then it is cool because like he's coming at the camera as he's falling down and smashes into that stack of bricks that's like right in the front of the camera. It looked good. I mean, great directing, great cinematography with that. So it made me laugh, but it also looked cool. Obviously, Gio and Valentina will end up getting together after this because they saved each other. They've been in this thing together since the beginning, and, that type of coming out at the end of it together, triumphant, that's what, in Giallo films at least, brings people together. So obviously, we foresee that Gio and Valentina are going to end up being an item after this. If only there was a sequel to this one. Like I've said already, good directing and cinematography. There's lots of engaging camera movements in this. Obviously, that's something in general that a lot of Giallo films did of the time. And I remember that being the same for Ercoli's other films. So, what you see here from the eye of Ercoli is very similar to what he's done in the other films as well. So there is a definite style of his that you can see throughout the films. And once again, so many characters pop up that it's hard to really know what's going to happen in the end. But overall, it's a good Giallo film. I did really enjoy it. You know, it doesn't crack my top 10 or anything, but it's not too far out of my top 10, honestly. I think Walks on High Heels is better. But out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. That's very respectable. I do dig this film. So now's the time where I would like to hear your thoughts on this film. Go ahead and put it in the comments. Let's talk. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Are you in between? And then if you just want to talk about Giallo in general, we can do that because I like to get nerdy about Giallo. As you can see by how many Giallo reviews I have on my channel. At this point, it's close to 60, so it's a lot. Or it might even be 60 at this point. I don't know. I just keep going, and I plan to keep going. But anyway, do me a quick favor, hit subscribe for me. It takes you literally a second. It costs you nothing. And please know it means a lot to me, and it's your way to repay me. It keeps me motivated, keeps me doing these reviews, especially these Giallo ones, because the response of people checking out these Giallo reviews has been a lot more than I thought it would be. So that's great. I love sharing this with people. So please pay me back by just hitting subscribe. Also, you can hit the notification button. And that way you'll know whenever I'm putting up new videos, whether it's a Giallo review or any of my other movie reviews or unboxings or any of opinion videos, any of that stuff. But regardless, I really do thank you for taking your time to check this out. And until next time, keep it brutal.